Hello everyone, Spectro here. Today I am on another video on Five Nights at Freddy's Cosmology because I've seen that everyone on my post or my recent post that they want me to scale it. So I have consistently seen a lot of people try to scale the cosmology, saying that it can reach to low multiversal, to fifth dimensional in terms of scaling, to even outer versal in terms of scaling. But today we will discuss on the cosmology of Five Nights at Freddy's correctly, using the right evidence, and I'll be even giving out sources in the end. This will be in the link in the description. So, before getting into the video, you have to remember the warnings or the rules. Well, not rules, but warnings that I pre-established for what I'm about to do. Basically, I could stutter sometimes, so don't mind that because I might be talking too fast. I am also heavily autistic, so imagine my fuck ups. But anyways, let's scale the cosmology. But hold it. Hold on a second. We need to discuss the canon city of Five Nights at Freddy's before actually trying to actually scale it. So the books are objectively canon, even stating that they take place in a different timeline or some of them chronologically happening within the game universe. A major example of this is Fazbear Fright's game Into the Pit, which is considered a new chapter of the FNAF game universe, which horrors that defy that universe, like define the FNAF universe, meaning this game should also be canonical and used for scaling. Now, this will be heavily important too within my scale. Easter eggs in Five Nights at Freddy's are in fact actual lore pieces Scott uses to flesh out his story. So anything that's basically actualized in the verse is literally actualized, like not fiction within fiction. It's the actualized thing itself. Like it doesn't even have to be matter with copyright because copyright doesn't fucking apply to fiction. Like people like to argue that it's copyright, therefore it doesn't apply. Uh, Copyright can't be used to define a fictional verse. Well, it can, but in the terms of connecting verses to each other, it's irrelevant. Fiction is metaphysically possible within the imaginary fictional narrative that people like to twist. So it's metaphysically possible for Five Nights at Freddy's to be canon to Marvel or DC, whatever. It doesn't matter if it's copyright or not. But anyways, so basically these are direct and blatant evidence for the books being canon. And as you can get there, there are more scans proving that they're canon. I do have more scans, but this is just narratively consistent that it's all canon. Five Nights at Freddy's, Five Nights of FNAF World. I was about to say Five Nights at Freddy's World, but FNAF World should also be used for scaling, as it literally concedes that it's outside the canon, but still canonical in a sense. Using the term outside the canon can mean outside the cosmology, which is further consistent with the cosmology, but we can further get that later on in the video. Now, I'd like to establish that the Dead by Daylight game is also canon to FNAF, given it utilizes the canonical end of William Afton as the basis for Springtrap, aka getting Spring Locked and Spring Bonnie, something that usually just happens in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Now, for the Dead by Daylight descriptions are also accurate to the actual lore of the games, meaning that Dead by Daylight doesn't really contradict anything. We know this is the case because there has been multiple characters who have the same dialogues. Not the same dialogues, but the same narrative consistencies and the same lore. This being Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, and, most importantly, the Demogorgon. But as a bonus, Dead by Daylight also utilizes voice lines from FNAF AR as voice lines for Dead by Daylight, meaning that they're not only does that mean that not only are the FNAF AR lines accurate to William's character, but that Dead by Daylight is directly taking its usage of William Afton from the actual games. So yes, Dead by Daylight is accurate to FNAF lore as such. It is reliable, and anybody who says otherwise is in pure denial, given Dead by Daylight is accurate to all corners of FNAF from the books and the games. Even FNAF World. I would like to establish that the movies are also canon, given Matthew Lillard has gone on record to say that the FNAF movie basically exists to fill in the blanks of the game lore. So, in instance, every FNAF game, novel, movie, etc., just take places in different timelines or have a continuation on that timeline. For example, the movie is basically like like the first movie is a continuation from the second movie. They're still in the same timeline. Establishing that Five Nights at Freddy's in terms of canon is already in a composite where everything is literally canon. Alright, so now we established that everything is canon within FNAF. Now we can assert where the cosmology scales to. Let's go establish the universes, which are probably the most broken motherfucking things in fiction. And I will actually tell you why they are, but bear with me here, as I am going to lowball the shit out of them. So here we go. They should obviously be fourth dimensional because they house spiral temporal frameworks that we are usually familiar with. This would thus logically follow that the Five Nights at Freddy's has like a fourth dimensional space time manifold of space time. Now, this space time is stated to be infinitely more huge, meaning it's bigger than a normal fourth dimensional space time, making it a composed fifth dimensional space time. As if X is infinitely bigger than a 4D structure, then it would have relations of X having an infinite multiplier beyond a 4D space, which would satisfy the prerequisite of space time in FNAF being a fifth dimensional. Making so this would make each universe in FNAF a fifth dimensional structure. Now we can get this even higher since we know that space-time continuums exist in FNAF based on the previous reason. We can lead to relations of Albert Einstein's existing as his space-time was or his idea of space-time was a fourth dimensional model which is the space-time continuum, which would instate that the theory of relativity basically exists within the FNAF narrative. Now, this could get even bigger because quantum mechanics exist within FNAF. As shown here, quantum entities, which are specifically in quantum mechanics as fundamental objects of quantum mechanics, which means the theory of relativity and quantum mechanics in this case is a unified substance, which unifies all the fundamental forces in the universe, creating the theory of everything. The theory of everything contains string theory, which is a 10th dimensional to even potentially 11th dimensional in terms of scaling. So each universe is 10D to potentially 11D, with the theory of everything including quantum field theory, non-relativistic quantum gravity, and etc. Alright, so you remember how those pre-established timelines that I mentioned, right? Yeah, those have quantum physics. But this is like a different type of quantum physics. It is described as a coin flip. Basically, there's two quantum possibilities which are randomly generated as zeros and ones, which are mathematical structures. This falls under a quantum coin flip, as quantum coin flip is basically supposed to represent the random events within the universe as a form of quantum superposition of possibilities, which does formulate into a quantum multiverse because quantum superposition is important within the Type 3 multiverse narrative that Max Tegmark presupposes, as it presupposes all possible outcomes of quantum measurements actually occur in a separate branch of the universal wave function. This is a consequence of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. It's literally the principle that a quantum system can exist in a combination of multiple states at once, described by a quantum well, my bad, described by a wave function that is literally linear combination of possible Inga states and the wave function. The superposition is the mathematical structure that basically allows the function or the wave function to encode all possible outcomes, which would mean that these timelines are infinite dimensional in nature and they're in an infinite multiverse hierarchy, aka a quantum multiverse. Now, this is begging the question, what is a quantum multiverse? This is explained by the American physicist Hugh Everett III. I don't know how to spell his name, but let's just call him Everett. He proposed the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics in his doctoral thesis at Princeton University in 1957. In effect, this implies that the universe is described as by a gigantic wave function that contains within it all possible realities. Many worlds' interpretation contains decoherence, which asserts that the wave function is objectively true, and theorizes how the particle movement can have an extra vector, which means they're axiomatically higher dimensions. The wave function is the collapse of the infinite universes, which the probability magnitude is 100% absolute. So the infinite possibilities refer to being a higher dimensional particle movement, which transcends each other and the Hilbert space spatial hierarchies. So this would also imply that each universe, quote unquote, is a higher and greater universe. Since the universe contains all of these timelines, it would also make it infinite dimensional by extension, and just like deeper into high hyperversal, like high hyperversal plus, for example. Now we could get this little multiverse typed higher to type 4 because code beings can merge with the real world. Basically, mathematical structures confused with reality, which means all conceivable mathematical structures exist within the universe. As if the universe is already depicted as infinite, then there would be an infinite number of code beings fusing into reality to make it that all mathematical structures physically exist. Excuse me for the grammar mistake. Now, to further prove the consistency of this, universes universes are in an infinitely layered hierarchy made out of mathematical code, as they refer to it as the subtunnel beneath the subtunnel, establishing some kind of superiority. Now, the reason why they have mathematical code in them is because there's actualized glitches within these said subtunnels, which would instate that there's code within those said planes. So there would be mathematical code within these said planes. This would obviously create an infinite hierarchy of transcendences, because infinite hierarchy of planes would mean that these planes would be like stacked on top of each other in a hierarchy where each hierarchical difference is higher than the last. These planes were stated to be metafictional too. What is metafictional by definition? Metafictional refers to a qualitative transcendence under this definition. This would cause an infinite chain of qualitative RF transcendence over each plane of reality. This would also mean that mathematical code would physically exist within the verse via these planes of existences. And AR world, which I will be covering shortly, so take this as a short skill, but it's an important factor within the verse. It's stated to be a computable universe parallel to the main universe of FNAF. Max Tegmark's commutable universe theory, which which basically what FNAF follows by this logic, which is connected to Type 4 multiverses. You might think that's right, or that's it. My bad for the grammar mistake again. You might think that's it, right? That's where you're wrong. Now, there's an official Reddit comment from Scott saying that FNAF's world is grounded within real world science and its logic is flawless. Now, what does this mean for all the jargon people? This would instate that FNAF is grounded with all real world ideas and frameworks, etc. The reason why this is the case is because real world science, which would be connected to real world math, which would be connected to real world philosophy. Philosophy is the field of theology, so philosophy equals theology, and it goes on and on and on and on and on to branches, branches, branches. As all the logical definitions and studies are needed within each other to stand, basically. So the cosmology is grounded in all IRL concepts of science and everything in general, proving that FNAF has all real-world concepts, ideas, and theories, which basically means that it's grounded having all real-world frameworks. This would mean that the universe, by definition, is pataphysical and metaphysical. Oh, spectral. Why metaphysical? Scott states that the universe is rooted with the existence of all supernatural and all sci-fi concepts and ideas. Sci-fi includes metaphysics and their encyclopedias, so the universe is pulling an SCP ripoff by being both pataphysical and metaphysical. Now this can even get any now this can get higher is because the very conception of the laws in nature exist, which means the verse has dualistic concepts such as good and evil, light and dark, etc. And supernatural by definition is something beyond the laws of nature. The reason why we can conclude with this definition is because all ideations of supernatural qualifiers would exist within the verse, which would make it transduality. Now, if you don't know what transduality is, it's basically a way to prove something that's transcending dualistic systems. But we can get the universe even higher and higher and higher than this by proving that this transduality is a transduality type 4 in power scaling wiki. By proving it transcends all logical and dualistic distinctions. Now, the dream multiverse, but I've already explained the dream multiverse in my previous video, but we can explain it again. So, guys, are you ready? Let's do this again. Mike's dreams are said to be impossible dreams, which are actual universes and dimensions, since the scan actually supports the idea or the notion of extended model realism, the idea that even impossible realities or outcomes can exist and not just necessarily within our own dimension or framework of actuality. When Reed says impossible dreams can happen even if it's in another dimension, the wording implies that what's deemed impossible in one world can still occur in somewhere else, in another dimension that directly aligns with modern realism's premise that all possible worlds exist with equal ontological status and possibility is only related to observer's frame of reference. So when the story states that impossible dreams can happen, and immediately qualifies it with even if it's in another dimension, it's explicitly grounding the notion of impossibility within the context of dimensional plurality. So it's 100% narrative assertion that all other dimensions house different truths or laws of possibility. So you can pretty much get to the argument, right? This would literally conclude that dreams are in an infinite multiverse with infinite possibilities that are ran under extended model realism's framework, which essentially has model realism by extension. So dreams abide by model realism and extended model realism's framework, and them being universes are ontologically equal, so they would have to abide by the universe, but still encompass by the universe itself, as the universe houses all the dreams. This would also conclude that the universe has model realism and extended model realism in a Five Nights at Freddy's context. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Anyways, the reason why we can also conclude that there are actual dimensions and universes is with this video right here. So basically it basically grounds the idea that they're universes. Now, for the context of Dead by Daylight scaling, the universe can be considered timeless and also spaceless by proxy because space and time are ontologically linked in FNAF. So this would mean that the universe is timeless and spaceless by proxy, which is looped with an infinite which is infinitely looped with an infinite regression. As an infinite regression means repeating the same thing over and over again, where each entity depends on the entity before it. An infinite regress is an infinite series of entities governed by a recursive principle that determines how each entity in the series depends on it or produced by its procedure. Basically, recursive means repeating, so it's infinite repeating. So an universe is an infinite regression of universes, basically, which is pretty fucking broken. There's metaphysical concepts which exist as complete abstractions right here. We know that abstractions exist outside of spatial-temporal frameworks, atemporal and spatial. It's even describing that universes are in metaphysical relationships, which would conclude that the universe is conceptual and metaphysical. Now, I explained this again. I will explain this again. I said the same thing twice, but ignore that. Since in the movie, we can see that Mike's dreams are actual dimensions in which these spirits are shown to have effect in. Even then, when he wakes up, they're still there. So that would thus logically conclude that the universe transcends all logical and dualistic distinction. Apparently, true and transduality type 4 is for high 1T to even high 1T plus ranges. So that's pretty cool. But I would actually conclude that anybody who scales to a goddamn universe is high 1T plus automatically. Now, here's where things get really confusing. Remnant is the essence of the conception of being and non being itself, basically being a holistic unity or rather pure unity, which means in the essence of literally everything in metaphysics and ontology itself, which would include essence and accidents. Remember that because that's going to be used to prove non duality. And it being the essence of the conception of being and being non being itself, it would logically follow that the universe is like there's nothing that overcomes being because being cannot be explained. It cannot be It cannot be overpowered or encompassed. All right. The universe and the multiverse would inherently have remnant, and remnant in this case transcends these frameworks, like the frameworks of being and non-being itself. Well, that contradicts what I said, but like what I mean by that is transcending the frameworks of essence and action. That's my apologies. Uh, because the essence existing as the core of all that remains within it, which would mean that the but yeah, when it says the essence existing as the core of all that which remains within it, which means that it's within itself. It's transcending these, like how Hegel describes the transcendence as like a transcendence infinitely. That's basically what in this context remnant is doing, which would mean these universes would transcend essence and accidents, which would make it non-duality or pure act, for example. But we'll just say it's non-duality. Now we will talk about Pilgrim's Progress, which is a canonical thing within the verse, as FNAF World has a boss battle with Dozer, who is a part of the Pilgrim's Progress. Now, the reason why this is so important is because the verse in particular is grounded with all ideations of Christian cosmology. Christian cosmology has ultimate realities, Neoplatonism, Thomistic philosophy, metaphysics, etc. Now, each universe within this context is described as an infinitely expansive universe that acts as the threshold of existence in the conception of infinity, which means it's devoided from any possible and conceivable infinities and encompassing them. Well, the reason why it's all encompassing is because of this. Said to be all encompassing. So now we established the remnant part. Let's see what absolute infinity in a theological case means. Absolute infinity in a theological case defines itself as the essence of unity that's devoided from any possible and conceivable infinities, that's defined as distinctions, multiplicities, and so on, with the basis of intellection, basically substance with the conscious thought, and is transcendent over all of reality. And is completely unintelligible, thus completely absent of actual infinities, multiplicities, distinctions, and differentiations, and it's completely with infinite potential. Now, this aligns with the monad, which is the best example of a tier 0 character. Now, absolute infinity is connected to apathetic theology, or rather negative theology, which states that X is ineffable and above affirmation, meaning each universe, if we apply it to old scaling terms from 2022, I don't really think this, so don't take it out of context, would be beyond tiering, as saying that X character is X tier would fall under affirmation since it would entail a propositional calculus, but it's still Tier 0. Now, here's where things get confusing. Jungian archetypes and Carl Jung's collective unconsciousness. Now, Jung tells us the collective unconscious is the cloud storage of humanity's experience in dreams, and dreams are the golden way to the collective unconscious, as it's a protection that shows the archetypes the very consciousness, or unconsciousness in this context, and those universes contains all those dreams, so we conclude that the universe is the storage unit of all those dreams and creatures within FNAF. To further support this, flowers possess the purest form of emotional energy found in nature. An energy capable of repairing the ego itself and reprogramming an individual's consciousness to the point of bringing them closer to a state of enlightenment. The ego itself would have to do with relations to Carl Jung's collective unconscious, as the ego is literally like the, how do I say it? It's like the middle part. But the future me editing this will correct me if I'm wrong. So scan right here, I guess. This would mean that this could mean relations that Buddhism can exist. Why is this the case? The state of enlightenment. Enlightenment leads to nirvana. Anyways, there's also Taoistic Ki, or known as Ki, because flowers are the energy of all living things, meaning that FNAF unironically can do Ki blasts from Dragon Ball. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention. The universes also have abstract universals like eternity within it, which doesn't really mean much. But if we look into abstract universals are fundamental concepts in metaphysics. So take that as you will. Alright, here's where it gets really, really, really crazy. So, you know how every reference or Easter egg is canon and actually actualized within the lore as established realities? Yeah, they fucking view Cthulhu Mythos and PlayStation as fiction. I'm even shocked by this myself. And since they have PlayStation on there, the verse just basically stacks on top of itself infinitely in an infinite regression where the verse is just an infinite regression of the verse because they contained itself. So FNAF would already seem like what most people would say top 5 in fiction based on these universes alone. Well, it actually gets higher than this because there's another theory I like to prove for FNAF, basically. Mark Grunwald's Omniverse theory. Now, this theory presupposes an infinite grand continuum containing all of fiction and nonfiction, viewing them as just parallel realities and encompassing them. Now, using the implication of Dead by Daylight scaling, we can get this statement right here.
The origins of the game stem from behavior looking to expand the omniverse of Dead by Daylight.
It's a story that we've been thinking around for quite a long time, and
which is pretty crazy.
It really fits the omniverse
as it literally
idea
says the omniverse
that
underpins
a lot
all
of the Dead by Daylight lore, and so it kind of slips together as a very natural fit.
The casting of Frank Stone has been crafted to be a standalone story in the Dead by Daylight omniverse.
Beyond tiering. Get it? Okay, I'm sorry. I'll shut the fuck up. Alright, anyways, we will discuss the realms within the universe. We have Ball Pit Realm, which is a pretty interesting yet confusing realm within the cosmology of FNAF. The Ball Pit is Eleanor's creation, a place where she stores all of the agony and remnant of her victims. It allows one to travel through different memories and time periods. Eleanor has complete control over it and can change it to how she sees fit, basically reality manipulation, which can have actual effects on what happens in those memories. Basically, Ball Pit Realm is a land where victims from Agony and Remnant are stored, an interdimensional place that was created by Eleanor used for traveling through the victims' memories within different time periods that she can actually affect the real events. Such as Larson is able to gain insight into Blackbird and change its outcome through the ball pit. Now, Eleanor is capable of throwing anybody into these dimensions regardless of their distance, as Larson is sent to the dimension multiple times without being anywhere near Eleanor or the ball, which suggesting that this ability has no range limits, which basically means it acts as a gateway to travel to different dimensions or different time periods, as shown from Larson, who's traveled through time just by going through the ball pit. These dimensions in question are actualized universes, as well as the game's description of Into the Pit suggests that Oswald will be capable of changing the events of the MCI, further supporting that these can be changed. This realm is also having causality, all types. For those who says it's a 0D realm, it contains a fucking moon and a sun, so shut the fuck up. It is also infinite, no measurement to determine of where it starts or where it ends, basically. Balls upon balls that have no up or down, meaning it transcends the concept of directions, referring to being beyond the concept of directions in space as a whole. Here's a little kicker to prove that they're universes, like the ball pit itself is a universe. Messing with the ball pit realm means affecting space-time itself, which adds narrative consistency that they are entire universes, or separate universes with it being comparable to space-time traveling or traveling through time and space. Now, the time period you go into the pit is called its own universe. But knowing the context of how the ball pit works, we know this is a memory, and we see multiple memories in the pit. So there's like 5 memories. So there's 5 memories, which equates to 5 universes. Now we can get this a lot higher. Now you know each ball in the ball pit, right? Each ball represents their own fucking universe, apparently, as it's shown a time period of where Millie receives the happiest day of her life within one of the plastic balls. And we know that time periods are their own universes, and there's infinite fucking balls, so that establishes infinite universes. Now, here's where the kicker comes. The ball pit realm contains or is able to produce voids which contain no time or space, which means this void is atemporal and aspatial. Basically, makes under this context is that the void holds all balls assigned within their own quantum state number based on their dimensions, establishing the many worlds and other vectors that differ from each other of the interconnectedness of gravity. And the void from nature lacks all topological, quantum mechanical, and intermentally dimensional properties to define it. This would also mean that the ball pit realm follows Type 3 multiverses or just Type 3 variantation of many worlds interpretation. Now, there is another universe that we have to establish, or rather parallel realm, than the main universe, AR world. Now we are finally talking about this world that's used to prove that the universe is a Type 4 multiverse. So automatically it should be a Type 4 multiverse due to the energy being, well, not the energy, the universe being computable, so it supports that notion that the realm isn't particularly higher, but it's a parallel universe and computable. Now, the AR world is said to be the real world but better, which just basically means a reality warped version of the in real life world. Most likely the universe as well, since AR world stands for augmented reality. This is stated once again in VIP interactive novel, where the AR world is a fictional setting to the real world and is meant to take things from the IRL world, yet we don't know multiple instances, things that inside can affect the real world. So basically, it's subjective reality, which will be important because we're going to argue Immanuel Kant's philosophy for this. In the stories under construction, the AR world and its abilities are associated with the many worlds interpretation, having all possible worlds or possible parallel universes, which is given in the context of Tiger Rock, even VIP, where AR world is explored in different interpretations of the cosmology. Universes in a different sense is already noted in how Fazbear's Entertainment made the world better through this. AR world and its capabilities are explained within many worlds interpretation and quantum immortality, which implies no matter what branch of reality someone follows, its consciousness will experience existence with each both I said each path leading to even more. This is furtherly expanded by the fact that Maya was forced to live in an alternate reality where everyone would die from cancer and turn into jelly beans. And in Tiger Rock, where Kyle lived in an alternate reality of his life with just certain changes in the world, making him understand that. This is also consistent with Healthy stating Cassie was still in the real world, but still in a better version of it, aka an alternate reality. And Many Worlds' main conclusion is that the universe is composed of quantum superposition of an uncountable, undefined amount or number or increasingly divergent, non communicating parallel universes or quantum worlds. So there's an infinite amount of mirror worlds, which only certain changes being of them. AR world universes contain their own laws of physics and space time, which are the universes that we established before. So we can establish that infinite amount of space time continuums universes. Anything that happens in like AR world affects the real world, stated by VIP Pig. This is also furtherly supported with Cassie being able to be killed in there and Tiger Rock grabbing Kai's arm caused a real bruise to appear outside the booth. So the capabilities of the AR characters are applicable via a subjective reality. So this could mean that subjective reality in this context is related to Kant's theory. Immanuel Kant argued where basically knowledge of the world is forever limited to the subjective perception, meaning both reality and fiction are filtered through human cognition. So that would mean AR World is following through this, and his philosophy is beyond, it contains all conceptual schemes. That begs the question, what's a conceptual scheme? A conceptual scheme is a formal or structured representation of concepts and their relationships. It's like a model or a blueprint or a diagram. I'll try simplifying it. Basically, let's imagine a restaurant schema. In your mind, it includes waiters, a menu, ordering and paying, etc. This can relate to relations of nonfiction and fiction and fan fiction, etc. These ideas would be objectively actualized within the FNAF narrative, as the AR world is literally parallel to the universe, which is objective. Or it's going to pull a DC situation where a universe is both subjective and objective, aka omnijective. So that would conclude that the universe is omnijective in DC's context. So it just logically follows there. So therefore, all ideas, laws, philosophies, by extension, theology, as philosophy is a field for theology, all of fiction, nonfiction, fan fiction, and one universe contains all this. There's also a little structure called zero point field, which is a scientific field that empties all of space and matter. The lowest energy state out there within quantum physics, basically. Yet mathematically doesn't reach a complete zero, with particles continuously exchanging into vibrations, thus having motion. Now you may think that's it, right? Like, that's it for the Five Nights at Freddy's cosmology. Well, that's where you're wrong, because this isn't even the fucking multiverse. Ah, here we go. Now, there exist infinite possibilities within the multiverse, in which corresponds to the Schrodinger's equation or random events generator, in which displays such possibilities based on binary code and random computation. It also determines the events that's caused afterwards, like determining an outcome of the coin toss from two possibilities without cheating. Consciousness basically outlines as the observer that connects to all branched realities, thus experiencing different states of existences of different realities separately. Now, there can't be two of the same existences occupying in the same universe, thus making it a paradox that ends the universe, like in Fredbear's situation. It also stated the same thing as well, explaining that an object must be in motion and always stay that way in terms of physics, implying that there's different states of motion that falls under quantum physics and they cannot both exist simultaneously, which means the universe is ran under type 3 multiverses under that context, are type 3 multiverses. Not the universe, multiverse, my bad. But with the other pre-established frameworks, we can conclude that this is way higher because the multiverse just contains all of this. And now this could mean that the multiverse in FNAF infinitely stacks on top of itself due to the assertion of a Type 3 multiverse, because they are established in an infinite hierarchy of higher and greater multiverses. So this would mean that each multiverse would view the last as fiction. Now we have something that's really popular in the Five Nights at Freddy's scaling community. FNAF World. Pretty popular in the power scaling community. Now we will establish where it scales to. Now it was a world that was created by the storyteller, aka Anim Dude, and which is the metafictional representation of Scott Cawthon himself, an imaginary creation from a supreme being that views all of his works and connections as nothing but fictional. It also holds Chipper's World, which is connected to the main multiverse, including the continuity of FNAF games, which within the Easter eggs, thus being connected to other realities as a whole. It is also implied and stated that FNAF World resides in a plane that almost destroyed all of the FNAF franchise. Now, FNAF World is a world that's incomprehensible and ineffable to the lower cosmology, which essentially means that it's a higher plane than the FNAF multiverse. Now, we have gotten so far within the cosmology, but there's only two more structures left: heaven and hell. Now, these realms are parallel, so these shouldn't even take that long. So, heaven is the highest plane within the cosmology, according to Scott's Pilgrim. Not Scott's Pilgrim. Yeah, Scott's Pilgrim Progress. I keep fucking shit up. Which is a plane of the cosmology beyond the cosmology. It would be a combination of said heavens and religions and mythologies. Like basically a composite heaven. Now for hell, hell is parallel to heaven, acting as the lower plane of heaven, but still parallel in a sense. Think of it like a fractal cake where all represent higher planes than FNAF World in its entirety. This is also acting as a composite hell. Now, in conclusion, for this long ass cosmology guide for FNAF, it's tier 0. Holy shit, I am mentally and physically exhausted making this because I immediately started making this video as soon as the William vs. Sonic video came out. Well, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Like and subscribe. This is my next video. My GOAT fancy pants scaling. See ya. See ya next time.